Hello, I'm Aaron Dangle with waiverprovider.com. With me I have the Acting Director for the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, Bryan Vaugn. We're going to go over a few different questions, and of course, after you're done watching this, if you do have additional questions or comments, by all means write me at waverinfo@aol.com, and I'll be more than happy to get with Bryan and try and answer additional questions for you. Good to see you today, Bryan.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for meeting with me, go over a few different questions, kind of help people with some of the questions they've been asking me.
Okay.
One of the questions I got from one of my readers was, with cost plans frozen, what happens when somebody desperately requires additional supports? For example, a 22-year-old male who is graduating from school and needs placement in an ADT. No funding for the ADT. The 22-year-old will stay at home and have no meaningful activity. His family is kind of stressed, and the mother can't work as a result of having no place for her son to go during the day. Based on his triage model, the 22-year-old would not meet medical necessity for a crisis situation. What do you think can be done in this type of case?
Well, I think it's a perfect case for us to work with and the waiver support coordinator to work with. What other natural or community supports there may be out there to look at the person's cost plan and look and see if there's other things that may be able to be moved around, to be creative. And that's one of the things that I've talked about quite a bit over the last few months is we have that ability in a lot of ways to be creative. We can look at the community, we can look at other possible issues. It's not there's not just one stripe part of this. There's a bunch of different type players that we can bring into bear.
Another issue with the cost plan freeze is, what about cases where budgets were dropped due to an error in ABC or the support coordinator not requesting all the services they needed? There are people without their services due to human error. What can be done about that?
Well, of course, if there's human error, of course we can fix that and basically try to make it whole and fix the human error problem and to try to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future. If it's a waiver support coordinator that just doesn't do something correct or doesn't, it's our duty as well as to work with them to make sure that this becomes only an isolated incident. That if there were mistakes made, okay, that's fine. Everybody makes mistakes, and we can move on from there.
But do you think it'll be able to be switched in the cost plan and they would get those services due to an error like that?
If there's a human error, say information was entered, an error or anything like that, it's a case-by-case basis, really. But I can't sit here and say across the board, no, we're not going to make any allowance for human error. I'm not willing to say that at all. But it is a case-by-case basis.
Kind of depends on the total circumstance.
Yeah, and with iBudget there is some flexibility, and kind of the way we're doing things now, it does give us some flexibility. So.
Speaking of the iBudget, can you explain the iBudget program a little bit and when it's going to roll out across the whole state of Florida for those people that really aren't that familiar with iBudget yet?
How long you got? I've been working with I was very fortunate. I've been working with the iBudget since we started. And today is not, we're not in the same conditions or the same environment, if you will, as we were when the iBudget started. That being said, I do still believe it is a great tool in helping us contain our cost. We have been, over the past few months especially, going out and having either face-to-face or webinars or conference calls with Family Support Council, with waiver support coordinators. Just last week we had more public meetings with parents and providers and consumers to get the word out there and to try to put their fears at ease, if you will. You know, with any new program, there is going to be some apprehension. That's expected. You know, I can't sit here and tell you that I could explain the entire way the algorithm is to you. But we have people to do that. Yeah. And so, you know, I think what we've seen in the past and what we tried to do from the beginning of the whole project is to work with our entire community and to get everybody's support, to answer any questions, and to try to prepare ahead of time for any type of things that we may be able to fix before they can become a problem.
Now, also I was told about the QSIs that they'll be used as part of the algorithm to determine the iBudget funds for a person. What can be done if the information reported on the QSIs is incorrect, or if the situation has changed and the QSI is now kind of outdated? Can people request a new one be done?
Well, I believe right now there's the QSI stands for approximately 13% in the algorithm as far as the iBudget goes. We're trying to get to where things are more static, where it's not as dynamic as it was in the past. And when I looked at some of the numbers in the past, you know, there have been hundreds of thousands of requests for, say, cost plan changes, and we only have 30,000 people in cost plan.
Right.
On the waiver support. So, trying to get more of a stable environment and predict any of those life changes. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about, we're already talking to our people, but we're also going to be talking, especially waiver support coordinators, is to try to avoid and plan for any of those potential crises ahead of time. You know, we know right now, I know there's approximately 1,500 people that are on the wait list whose parents are getting up there in age. And so, you know, we're already making plans, so we know we're going to have to bring those people on the waiver program. And the earlier that we can work with those consumers and work with their families to come up with a plan, so when the parents do pass away, or if the parents get to incapacitated to the point where they no longer can care for the people, it's not a crisis. The consumer, for the best, you know, can have things, they can kind of know what's going on. The parents can have a peace of mind as to knowing what's going on. And that's just one example of how to try to make it a more interactive type process. So we're not scrambling around here. You know, I saw a recent crisis application where, and I think this is where APD, you know, kind of dropped the ball on something. We've known for 11 months that a person's parent had terminal cancer, and for whatever reason we waited till it was too late. And those things we're working on correcting, and mainly because we want to make the consumers, I mean, they are our number one priority, and we want to ensure, to the best of their knowledge and the best of their abilities, they know what's going on. And I think by working close with the waiver support coordinators, like I just mentioned, I think we can better do that.
You know, I gave you the idea to do away with the QSI assessors and let the support coordinators perform this task. This would save money, and I think the support coordinators would do a much better job with it, especially being that it's done every 3 years, and I mean this could save millions of dollars for the APD budget. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I mentioned to you when you brought it to my attention, I still see it as a potential conflict of interest, and that's in my job. That's one of the things that I have to look for, and the other is our salary dollars aren't affected by the waiver. You know, our salary and administrative funds are totally separate from the labor services. So it's we wouldn't see if we cut those positions, we're not going to see that money just automatically transfer to the labor.
Can you explain the new paperless system APD Connects and when that's planned to roll out?
A hard date, no. Right now, we're testing it in Area 1, and we're working with our providers as well as our area staff and trying to get all the bugs worked out. You know, one of the things, and it's just like the I budget and a couple other projects, you know, for when I came on board in February, you know, people told me, well, you know, APD has said, you know, has set so many deadlines and they've missed them, and they've said this, missed them. And, you know, my thing is, well, unless you can tell me it's in stone, why don't we just we'll work on things, and as soon as we know and we have a good date where we feel comfortable that we're going to be able to roll it out, let's say that. If we don't know right now, you know, because it could be technical glitches or whatever, let's also say that. You know, I want to be as and to create this organization and have it be as accountable to the taxpayers and as open and transparent as possible. And that way, working in like the forum we had last week, I think it was last week or the week before, and talking about some of those issues. I think that's kind of where we're going to get there.
Just kind of make sure you know exactly when the right date's going to be instead of making a date and then kind of having to wait.
Well, if you know,
with programs, there's always glitches.
Well, yeah, well, and another thing, you know, and it's not like we're rolling out just one program at one time.
Right.
Where it's I seem to be a glutton for punishment. Besides the electronic records, we're also looking at iBudget. We're also rolling out several other programs at one time. So, you know, we're having to kind of do a number of things simultaneously, and I would much rather say that we're going to get there than have to explain and then say, okay, we're projecting for it 1st of July, and 1st of July comes, and well, I'm sorry, we missed that date. And 1st of August, something happens, so we missed that date. And it just doesn't, credibility kind of starts waning away.
I totally understand that. And people that have looked over the paperless program and things like that so far, are they giving you good input?
I think so. I recently met with an organization, and I want to sit down with them, and I've been trying to do this throughout the state, either via telephone or going in person, to get impact, to talk to them face to face, to listen to what they have to say, to try and let them know where we stand. And the client central records was talked about, and the more we talked to them to kind of explain things to them, I think the better they understood it, and the more comfort they had with it. And especially when we started, you know, talking to them about we're gonna be able to less getting in their way monitoring. As you know, one of the things that we've tried from the beginning, like the governors have tried to reduce needless bureaucratic rules. And I think with this electronic system, a lot of our monitoring will be able to be done from here in Tallahassee without having to go disrupt the provider's day-to-day operations.
Right.
And then they said so, and some of the providers told me it's difficult because they have to take a person basically to go sit with our monitors, or whoever's monitoring during that day, to go through all the paperwork. Whereas now, it'll be right there on the computer. If they need something more that they can't find right there, then they can contact the provider.
That's good. You have providers complaining that it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year or more to get a provider number and get registered to be a provider. Also, once providers actually get a Medicaid number, they have to sign up with each separate APD district across the state if they want to cover the whole state, that is. Can you imagine, this is a very long process. With today's technology, isn't there a faster and easier way to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-part question. One, the Medicaid numbers, I believe those are issued through ACA, and they come from Medicaid. And we don't have a whole lot of input on how quickly Medicaid does that. The other is, I think with the electronic record system and with some of the other issues that we're trying to go to, as well, just like with standardizing your training. When I came on board, we literally had numerous curriculum for the same training, but it just depended on what area you went. And I wanted to make sure that, and it was changed to standardize that. And this is kind of the same way. I want to make sure that our providers, if they want to work in Escambia County or all the way to Dade County, everybody's playing by the same rules, everybody's on the same sheet of paper. That I would like it if once you fill out the paperwork and you get your Medicaid number, you can work with our area offices, and there could be like a map of Florida with our areas and say you want to work on these, and then click that or something of that sort. I would love to be able to, anything we could do to streamline our processes, I'm all for it.
And then, as I mentioned to you before, that APD could save also additional funds and put more consistent, speaking of the training, if they were to centralize the provider training, it would be very convenient and save providers quite a lot of time and money if they could log onto their computer, take training classes, attend required monthly meetings right from their office by perhaps a web seminar or something like that, WebEx. APD could consolidate on a local level and have about 12 individuals that handle it for the whole state instead of having 2 or more for each district like they do now.
Right.
And I mean, again, with today's technology and things like that, I believe it would allow people, like you were just saying, being on the same page, everything being done the exact same way, because I've personally been to different districts and I've seen different trainings and sat through the training classes in different ones. And I've heard different trainers say some different things. So, I mean, I personally believe if it was done that way, then again, everything would be done exactly the same way every single time. I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, kind of like my answer to the previous question. I think standardizing training throughout the state will help. We are looking a lot at WebExes. We're looking a lot at web-based courses. I mean, there's some stuff, there's no problem, and the person can go do it, and they don't need any personal interaction. Where there may be some other where they do. One of the things in looking at that we were able to identify early on is with our monitoring. To me, it seems like a waste of time if we have monitors that are going out month after month, and they've done that for years now, and these programs every month they have no major gigs. Then why do we need to keep going out there every month?
I believe that myself. Yeah, you have certain providers that have just proven themselves time after time after time, but yet they're still monitored quite a bit. And you're right, on those circumstances, if they've proven themselves, sure, then maybe they don't need to be monitored as much as other individuals that have had issues and different things wrong. And it would free up more time for you in APD to be able to work on the other individuals that need more help and more work.
Exactly. And it's kind of the same thing with training. I feel certain that a large portion of the training can be done via the computer or via electronic means. But there may be some remedial training. I don't know yet, but because we're still trying to identify the whole. We've got a section now that's that's their focus, is provider training. But for when our monitors go out and say they work with ABC provider for 6 months, and they come back, they're like, listen, we've tried this, this, and this, and they're just not getting it, you know, and they may need to do some face-to-face training with them to make sure, because we want to make sure that our consumers, you know, their health and safety is number one, and then we want to make sure that either the provider is going to be able to deliver the services or the products or whatever it may be in the best way they can for our consumers. And if you know, if we try, if we can work with them and get them on board, great. But if I know grandma used to say, if you can't come up with snuff, then it just may not be for you. And I think that's kind of what we're moving towards.
And let me ask you another question. I asked your predecessor this question. Say you have a provider that wants to apply in a certain district to be a provider, and the person at APD says, "No, we're not going to give you a license. You're not going to be a provider." And they ask, "Well, why is that?" "I'm sorry, I don't have to tell you why. It's not something I'm required to have to tell you." Do you think that would be right, or do you think, like, if somebody came into your office, the governor called and said, "I'm sorry, we have to let you go," wouldn't you expect a little bit of a reason why?
I think, well, two different circumstances. I work at the pleasure of the governor. Because that tells me, I don't want you no more, he doesn't want me no more.
I know, but still, you'd like to have a reason, wouldn't you?
But if we're going to turn someone down, yeah, I do believe that we should be able to give them a reason.
Okay, that's the same answer that your predecessor gave, but yet it still happens.
Okay, well, when it happens, I need to know about it.
Okay.
Only, since feels like the 5 years I've been here, 5 months that I've been here.
Let's see here. Paperwork is also a major complaint with providers. In many cases, paperwork doesn't add any value to the services, but instead just adds to the cost of doing business. I know you guys are working on the paperless programs, things like that, but can any or all providers use a checklist instead of writing notes for their documentation, perhaps only writing notes when something unusual or significant happens? Considering all the provider rate cuts that have occurred over the past few years, it's important that we, reduce unnecessary work where we can. And, I was just thinking that, unless it's a major thing that's switching, something very important, instead of writing case notes each and every single time, that maybe there's certain checklists that can be made.
We are looking at that. We're looking at forms, and you can ask my staff. There's two things that I push all the time, and one is I believe in keeping things simple. And the other is I believe in using plain, straightforward language. We're going through now and making sure that we have we're all on the same page, if you will, because one thing I found out, kind of like training, was a lot of times there were different forms depending on what area you were in for the same information. And so now we're going to more standardized forms. And these are going to be electronic forms. We're also looking at, and as part of the looking at regulation, it's also looking at the information on those forms, or like on the service logs, can we just use attendance sheets where the provider has a list of the client's names, and we can check down, like on the attendance log, whether our consumer was there, instead of going through and having to fill out like a service log for every person, every hour. If one of our consumers is going to be in a program, say for 6 hours a day, and when they come there, they're checked off, and you know, 1 or 2 times during the day, you know, however we decide our appropriate times, just to make sure that the provider has a way to ensure that nobody's getting lost. Yeah, it's, you know, if we can just do the attendance check sheets where, and we don't have any problems with that, I'm all for it. I'm all for, you know, if anybody has any suggestions or ways we can do things better, let me know. Yeah, it's like I've said about every time I go and speak to different groups. I think anybody who says that, you know, looks at this job and says, well, I know everything about that job and I can go in there and run it without help, is probably not playing with full deck, because this job, I don't think any one person can know everything about it. And you know, we want to make it as business friendly as we possibly can, while ensuring the health and safety of our employees, or of our clients, but also of our employees. That's you know, that's, as I mentioned earlier, my #1 concern is the health and safety of our consumers, and the health and safety of our employees. And when I say our employees, it's not just APDs, it's the providers, staff, because I feel like, you know, in a roundabout way, they work for me and they work for APD, and I want to make sure that their health and safety is, to me, is just as important as someone who works for APD. And I'm not going to, you know, sacrifice, you know, something quicker if I put either group at risk.
And how much more needs to be cut from the APD budget after the 4% provider rate cuts go into effect on July 1st? I was at the meeting on the 9th when APD asked people's opinion on possible ways to cut the budget. Do you plan to use any of those ideas that were given? If so, which ones?
I know we're going through them, but honestly, at this moment, I can't remember any of the specific. I do remember some that, you know, we checked off, we marked off, and we are looking at it. But like I said, at this moment, I can't remember exactly which ones they were.
Well, one of them was, off the top of my head, was the limited support coordination for group homes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you guys are looking at in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, we are looking at that one.
Do you really think that that would be a good idea to do limited support coordination for group homes or assisted living facilities, wherever the clients may be? There's so many bad things that have happened. I think taking extra eyes off might not be a good idea.
Well, and it's one of those, and I agree with you, and it's one of those that we can't make a blanket statement for. And even when I've talked to waiver support coordinators or other providers, we all kind of arrive at the same location. Now, does that mean that kind of with the deemed status is if in some way in fan or, you know, fan focus, that we may be able to move from a full limited, you know, full support coordination to limited in the future, based on, you know, all the kind of combination of things in a given length of time. We're still looking at those, and but I was asked several times about that, and I told them we'd look into it, and that's what we're doing. And we're trying to get as much information as we can before we make a final decision. But that was one of the big things that when we talked to providers as well as waiver support coordinators is that they brought up. But you also, you know, and matter of fact, there was a waiver support coordinator that told me, and they said, you know, there probably are some people who would do just fine with limited. But it's another one of those things that may end up being on a case-by-case basis. You know, unfortunately, because I very much believe in person-centered, planning and person-centered clinical approach. And because I know one size doesn't fit all. And so in making some of the decisions we have to, where we can work things out where it's the best of both worlds, it's great. But if we can and we can't do it all today, that's fine too. We just at the end of the day, we're going to do the best job we can.
Right, because I personally know there's always really good group homes and there's not so good group homes. It does vary, it does depend, but it worries me to think, if there wasn't enough people observing and being able to go out there and look, that other bad things can happen.
Right.
They just went over to the Miami Herald and they just did a huge story on that, and I personally knew one of those particular homes that they commented on, and years ago I actually reported that group home and nothing happened. And that's another question I have for ACA, person that's running it now, and I've already spoke to a few people today about different things about that. But it's just important that enough people watch and make sure that everybody's well taken care of.
Yeah, and unfortunately or fortunately, however you can look at it, coming from my background, I tend to be a little bit suspicious anyway, and to me, I want to see. You can tell me all day that you run a great program. I want to see you run a great program. I want to see how well you do over 6 months, 12.
Another question: if somebody voluntarily decides to reuse their services to try and help out the situation with the budget, if it is a tier determining service, and they decide to cut them, will they basically lose their tier placement? Is it something they wouldn't be able to get back again?
No, as we stand right now today, and as we've been doing since we put it in place, it would not affect your tier placement. If someone comes in and voluntarily, withdraws it, I don't even know that your tier placement is not going to be affected. We're even considering looking at, because we've literally had phone calls from families saying, I've looked at my support plan, and I may not need this much. I'm sure somebody else, and so we're even looking at different ways to kind of encourage that. And one of the things that was proposed to me that we're looking at internally is if a family does voluntarily give up, say $2,500 worth of whatever it may be, and they do it voluntarily and come back later on and say we're going to have $5,000 cut, if we can give them credit for that $2,500 that they've already been cut. And it's stuff like that that we're looking at to try to remain support for the families, and getting them to be able to look at their support plans, and if they want to voluntarily, but not punish them if something changes.
What's being done to address the waiting list? That's always a big topic with everyone, especially, when there's almost 20,000 people that aren't actually getting any services. Some have been waiting for over 8 years. The legislators continually chips away from the APD budget, reducing you guys' budget all the time, and reducing provider rates, and it really doesn't even we don't have enough money to actually fund everybody that's getting services. That's why we're looking for cuts now. Do you ever see anything done to help these people on the waiting list in the future?
Yes. We're right now looking at a couple different things. We're piloting a program now, and I would like to see it done, if not every month, every other month, and it's being, I believe, Area 2, we're going to pilot it, where, say on a Saturday, parents, if they're on the waiting list, and if they have, child, say with autism or some type of intellectual disability, they can take their young person to, say, every place has a National Guard Armory or community college, someplace where we could man it with volunteers. And believe it or not, we've had a lot of APE staff who said, listen, if y'all do this, I want to volunteer to work in this. So mom and dad can have from, say, 8 in the morning till 6 in the afternoon. They can go off and they can have a date, or they can work in the yard, but they can have that time where they know that their young person or their loved one is being taken care of. Even if they want to go home and watch a football game at home, whatever it may be, where they get that respite. Another, we're looking at also giving each area an allotment based on how many people in the area are on the waiver, where they have to spend that money monthly on providing services for those people, for as many people in their area that they can. Say if you have someone, I don't care if it's any given person may need, if you go buy 6 months worth of diapers, or if they may need something like that, I think anything we can do to help them, I think it's a good thing. And each area administrators, we're looking at, we're putting together the policies and procedures right now, and the formulas, and we're going to be holding, working with the area administrators, and they're going to have to show us every month what they spent that money on and what they tried to put out those services for people on the wait list.
Good. It's good to know. Is there a priority checklist for getting on the waiver faster if you're on the wait list? Or is it only crisis right now?
Well, the way it's legislatively written, basically we have to ensure that we can annualize that person. We can take care of them. And unfortunately right now it's going to have to be where it's either a crisis, like you said, or by attrition. And a lot of it is, the legislature put the guidelines out there that we have to go by.
And what about managed care? Do you think APD will go to managed care? If managed care were to happen, what do you think it would change? Would people lose services?
Well, right now, under existing language, IPD has been carved out, and I forgot, it's 2 or 3 years, however long they've given us to show that our system works. And so I'm going to APD, and it's kind of one of those things where if everything does well, all the staff, if it goes wrong, I'll wear it. But we're working towards the language and the mandates that we're.
In other words, basically, APD gets everything under budget, all under control, then there should be no managed care at all even thought of. Is that correct?
Some of those things are made at the legislature. My job here is to is to ensure that we come under our budget and we make our budget. And the legislature has said that they want to give us time to show that we can make things work. And I do believe wholeheartedly that we can make things work.
Well, I for one hope that happens, because I don't want to see it go to managed care. But that's it for my questions for right now. And I do appreciate you taking the time to answer some questions, and especially different questions that readers and different providers have had for us. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more.
Okay. Anytime.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.